Good afternoon and welcome to Cold Chain Insights, the podcast that focuses everything temperature-controlled logistics for the pharmaceutical industry. My name's Thomas Hunt, and this week I'm delighted to be joined by Ada Palmadottir, who is the Vice President of Business Development at Controlant. Ada, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you for the invitation. I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm very well, and it's great to have you on. Just to kick things off, I think it's always a good place to start is if maybe you could run us through your career so far and then obviously your current role there at Controlant as a start.
Yeah, a little bit about my background. I'm actually a pharmacist by training, and at the core, my motivation has always been the same: patient safety. I've always believed that every patient deserves access to medicines at the right quality. So after all the effort that goes into R&D, finding the right molecule, formulating it, manufacturing it, you can't add quality back once the product leaves the factory. So you either protect it all the way to the patient or you don't. So that's kind of my reason for getting up in the morning. So I've been at Controlant now for a little bit over 14 years, working right at the intersection of pharma, logistics, and technology. My focus has been on making these incredibly complex supply chains more predictable, more transparent, and frankly, more trustworthy. In my current role, I work on business development and partnerships, helping organizations adopt real-time visibility solutions that improve patient safety, reduce waste, and modernize how the cold chain actually works or operates. And a big part of my job is collaborating with customers and industry partners to shape roadmaps and make sure our solutions really evolve with the needs of global pharma supply chains. And before Controlant, I was CEO of a company that marketed and distributed pharmaceuticals in Iceland. And earlier in my career, I managed pharmacies in both Iceland and Norway and worked as an operational and marketing manager for a pharmacy chain. So I've seen the journey of a medicine from quite a different angles. And that perspective has been like a big foundation for how I work today.
Great. Good. Okay. Thanks for that. I think I wanted to start around Controlant's technology because obviously it's a core part of what your current role focuses on. And I think reasonably recently, Controlant Go was launched as a ready-to-deploy real-time device. And I first wanted to understand a bit about what that device was and what made it so unique.
Yeah. So, well, at a high level, Controlant brings together hardware, software, and real-time logistics intelligence into one platform. And what that really means in practice is that companies can finally prevent excursions, improve handovers, and automate a lot of decisions that used to require manual chasing and guesswork. So our whole focus is making real-time monitoring effortless at scale. Everything from the ready-to-use devices, the Controlant Go that you were referring to the full enterprise-level control tower, data and insights. It's all designed to work together and just work out of the box. And when you unify visibility across the entire supply chain, something big happens. Teams can respond faster, waste drops, and product integrity stays intact all the way to the patient. And because we keep pushing the technology forward, both in terms of innovation and global reach, Controlant has really become the leader in helping organizations move from reactive supply chains to one that's genuinely predictive. And let me see here on the Controlant Go, just briefly ground everyone in what the device actually is. Some listeners might not be familiar with it. So our Saga is a GXP compliant IoT device that is designed for the real-time monitoring of shipments. It tracks the key conditions that directly affect or impact product quality, namely temperature, location, and light exposure, making the industry standard for the real-time visibility, as I said. And with Controlant Go, we are now offering a single-use real-time option, expanding our portfolio to meet a broader range of customer needs and shipment profiles. So this solves the pain of adopting a real-time solution, monitoring, as for many, it provides a simple, low-barrier entry point. The device works straight out of the box. Existing workflows stay more or less intact, and customers, they still gain the full real-time visibility with instant access to meaningful shipment reports. So, yeah.
Okay. If you're looking at sort of real-time, also I'm quite familiar with device IoT and real-time monitoring in general, but in terms of this this solution, I understand it removes sort of the training onboarding element. And how is it very different to other things on the market in terms of those first steps in terms of implementation and bringing customers on? What does it solve, and how does it make that process smoother?
So it makes the process smoother in the sense that there is no preparation. There is no device preparation. It comes fully prepped, ready. Just press the start button and you're monitoring and you get real-time alerts. Everything has been preset. So the operators, they don't have to do anything to set it up for real-time monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is probably one of the biggest advantages. And then, of course, a QR code that you can scan to get the quality report. Also, the automatic data upload. If you compare to the older version of the temperature monitoring in the old days, a dummy USB locker that you would have to plug in and upload to get the data from it. And of course, after the fact, there is no such a thing. There is automatic data upload.
Yeah. And so when you're saying the device comes sort of preloaded with the information, is that a conversation between you and your sales team effectively to sort of put those data points in before the device arrives? I presume that the customer
Yes.
still
Yes.
preset the requisites and they come, you're doing that within your factory, etc., and then putting them straight into the supply chain.
Yes, correct.
Right. It's interesting. And is that very unique to Controlant? I haven't heard of that before.
So it's unique in the sense that it's a single use, ready to go from the box. Just once, press the button and it's ready to go. And that's unique from where we started. Because this device and the platform have all kinds of bells and whistles, and it takes some effort to get there, to fully integrate us, to get all the benefits. But you still get the benefits of the real-time monitoring, and you get the alerts and notifications when something goes wrong. So we realized that there was a gap in the market, that there were customers that wanted to start but didn't want to, or weren't for some reason ready to take the step fully with integrations and everything, that this offers a smooth way into real-time monitoring.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of real-time monitoring, what are the barriers typically the customer has to going into it? You've mentioned there a bit around the implementation. There seems to be there's always a slight perception in the industry around difficult to reach sort of zones or areas or inside aircrafts, or when you can get accurate data. Where are we with that in terms of this sort of accessibility, I suppose, of real-time monitoring out in the field?
Yeah, so it's very natural that inside an aircraft, at least when it's up in the air, you are not allowed to communicate. And that's for the safety of all of us, the passengers. So we're not interfering with anything. And this, you have to have the devices in so-called flight mode so they don't interfere. But if you look at it, there is nothing you can do during a flight that is either 3-4 hours or maybe up to 10 hours at maximum. The device goes into so-called flight mode when the aircraft takes off and gets out of the flight mode when you turn off the engine after landing. And then it has been collecting the data all the way through the flight. So you don't miss out on any measurement point. You still get all the temperature data. You just don't get it in real time while you're in the air. But there's also, you have these ways of knowing and tracking the flight anyway. So you can still see the location of your goods, even if you have to wait for a couple of hours or a few hours for the actual temperature while in the air. But there are, we have a global reach when it comes to the cellular connectivity with our device.
Yep.
Obviously, out in the middle of the ocean, you don't have connectivity, to your point earlier. But also what we see, that excursions, that's not where they happen. You usually, if a container is correctly set at the correct set point and is plugged in, it is a flatliner. It's almost the best storage condition that you can get for your product. It's while at sea. Mistakes or challenges happen at handover points during like loading or unloading and offloading the vessel, offloading from the truck to where you store the container until the vessel is due at the seaport, etc. And all these we detect, and the wrong set points of a container, for example, set at 1525 when it was supposed to be 228. All this is detected before the vessel leaves the seaport. So the real risk isn't that high. And then, of course, the device will manage to connect when you sail around the shore of whatever country it is. It picks up, so you in between get data depending on the route.
Yeah. Okay. And what do you think the sort of biggest misconception customers have about IoT devices, remote monitoring, that really isn't an issue, but they often see as one?
I think part of what we mentioned, the things that you touched upon already, it's the, I want to see what's happening while it's in the air. And then, when it's out in the middle of the ocean. And we also see that, you can also pick your lanes that you want real-time monitoring for. And I think that is maybe also for the future, that you will have different types of devices for different lanes or products based on the risk assessment that you've done. So when it comes to, I always challenge my customers or our customers with if you look at the price and if you're not paying more, why wouldn't you want this? Because you get the actual door-to-door lead time. You get all the analytics on top. You have everything in one platform, and all this beautiful analytical tools and AI that you can put on top of this is just, great to have.
Absolutely. And are there certain lanes where real-time monitoring is like an absolute must? And are there certain lanes where actually it's a nice to have? For example, you mentioned ocean there being very seamless in terms of its active temperature control. But I'm talking about the reactive element of this. So, for example, if a pallet's on the tarmac and real-time monitoring showing it's got a few hours left before excursion is probably most likely, I can see huge value in that. So do you advise customers differently depending on lane?
No, we haven't been doing that. I would always recommend, because what happens when you have a 40-feet container filled with your product into a market and something goes wrong and you don't know about it until afterwards. So you can experience a stock out. It's a very costly loss and waste of products, and you have to reproduce and resend and maybe use air freight that time. So it's a really costly, if something goes wrong.
Yeah. For sure. Okay, no, good. And I also read that Controlant was the release of a $35 million funding release, and it positions Saga Card as the next innovation, and it giving visibility down to the case and the carton, not just the pallets, which was really interesting. I suppose, how does that change your conversation with customers? And can you give us a bit of a background what Saga Card actually is for the people who aren't quite aware?
Yeah, I can. So when we first introduced the MVP, or the minimum viable product for Saga Card, it really shifted the tone of our commercial conversations. Saga Card will be the first GXP compliant device that truly enables end-to-end tracking from manufacturing all the way to the point of consumption. When customers hear that, the conversation immediately moves beyond tracking shipments into something much bigger. So instead of thinking in terms of pallets, they start imagining what's possible when you get visibility down to cases, cartoons, even individual units. So it opens a whole new way of thinking. What if you could follow each unit through manufacturing, storage, distribution, returns, multiple handling loops, and even see when it's actually consumed? So that changes everything. What customers quickly realize is that it isn't just about quality monitoring anymore. Unit level visibility gives them insights into how inventory really moves, how products flow through different markets, and how consumption patterns actually look, not just how they were planned. So for many customers, that shift from shipment level data to product level intelligence completely reframes the strategic value of real-time monitoring. It moves the conversation away from monitoring lanes to talking about precision logistics, market behavior.
How does Saga Card do technically what you're describing? How does it actually deliver it? Talk us through the sort of technical elements of Saga Card and what it's actually doing there on the ground.
So this is, you could say, a light version of Saga. This is connects with the cellular. It has a cellular connectivity. It also has a Wi-Fi connectivity, and there is a lot of technology embedded into this small card that allows our customers in the future to use it as well for the monitoring of temperature, the regulatory mandatory part of it.
And so, and you're talking about going down to carton. So are you talking about customers be able to embed that in sort of much smaller items, obviously?
Yes, because this is almost like the patient leaflet inside a package.
Yes. Okay.
So it can't be used to detect like opening of the box, at the
Yeah.
patient, when patient open the box, or let's say clinical kits, when they're opened, that's the point of consumption. So what the actual dose has now been consumed. So you can use that, feed that into your planning.
Yeah. Okay. And when you talk to customers and you show them this, or when your experience, what problem does Saga Card solve that they didn't really even know they had?
So I think most pharma companies genuinely believe they have good supply chain visibility. I think so, because they're monitoring the shipments. What they don't always realize until they either see Saga in action or see the use cases is that the real blind spot isn't at the pallet level at all. It's at the unit level. They suddenly see that they actually don't know what happens to each individual product once it leaves the shipper. So shipment level monitoring gives a good overview of transport, but you are missing out on everything that happens afterward. Box openings, handling steps, secondary movements, or even the exact moment of product is when it's used. All of that invisible without unit level sensing. And then there's everything that happens in the unofficial loops. Product being stored somewhere temporarily, repacked, moved again, handed off, or even diverted. So none of that shows up in traditional monitoring systems. So companies end up assuming they have clean, lean, linear flow when reality is often much messier. And the same goes for, I would say, for inventory and market behavior. Without unit level data, it's hard to know where products actually end up, how quickly they move, or what markets are truly consuming them. So most companies don't realize how big that blind spot is until they get their first stream of Saga Card data. So what it really does is to reveal operational commercial blind spots that they didn't even know they had. Maybe, of course, they suspect that. But
Okay.
yeah.
I think it's really interesting. Sorry, just to dive in a bit more into it. But if you looked at, say, an excursion and you're going down to the carton level, are you saying that there's obviously with this system you could not put the entire pallet into quarantine, because obviously a data log at the moment typically is on the outside the pallet and it takes quite a crude reading of the overall temperature at that point. It can be top left, top right, or wherever it's placed. But obviously cartons that are in the middle of the pallet or have a more central position typically probably won't have an excursion at that point when the outer logger shows one. So is there a point where the amount that goes into quarantine is reduced hugely for pharma when there is obviously a flag on an outside logger, because you can actually see what's happened on the inside the pallet?
Yes. And for those that will eventually in the end validate Saga Card for their temperature, for the product release, this is exactly the benefit they will be experiencing.
Right.
You know how it is today. We quarantine the whole pallet because of a logger that is either on the left side or, one of the sides or on top. But we really don't know, wasn't it okay in the middle? We have to assume the worst, take some samples maybe, do some testing that takes weeks sometimes. So this would be much faster because you would know immediately, okay, those cartons on the outside, remove them. Those in the middle, we guarantee they're safe. We don't have to worry about them.
Yeah. I mean, in our experience, the boxes in the middle, because the mass of the product are so protected that there's very, very rarely an excursion when you have a logger on the outside the pallet that's gone out of temperature.
Yeah.
It's not the whole pallet that has by any shape. I think it's quite widely known, but until you have the data, you don't know and you can't act on it, I suppose. So.
But again, patient safety, we would all want to, if it was a medicine for ourselves or somebody we love or friends or family, we would definitely want it to be safe, and not just safe, but effective.
Yeah. Well, you need the data, don't you? Until you can have the data, you can't make it. Yeah.
Be confident in saying this is okay.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay, good. I wanted just to talk around Control Tower and sort of real life, and I know it's something that you've spoken about before. And at Logipharma, I think it was 4.0 Connect, you talked about, it was a keynote session around how real-time Control Tower intervention delivers value. What was the key outcomes of that session? What were the takeaways for people who weren't there?
So when we delivered that keynote, the feedback was really strong. We went in wanting to show something very practical, how real-time monitoring and Control Tower intervention actually reduce waste in the real world. And it connected because so many teams are dealing with the same challenges. The big takeaway from the session was that real-time Control Towers aren't a nice to have anymore. They are quickly becoming the new way of operating. So once companies see what's possible when you catch issues in the moment, not days or weeks later, it's a complete mindset shift. As we had seen up to 95% reduction in product waste. It always gets people attention, and that's what we wanted to communicate. So we broke it down into 3 core values. 1, the visibility, finally having one source of truth for the entire supply chain. 2, the control, being able to take proactive action because you're seeing what's happening in real time. And the 3rd, efficiency, with less waste, lower cost, more automation, and better performance overall. By the end of the session, you could feel like, at least for some people, there was a shift in the room. People weren't thinking about monitoring anymore. They were more thinking how real-time decision-making could reshape the way they're running their supply chain.
Yeah, I think, and we've spoken a few times around this topic, and often comes up is the amount of data and information that comes in and how to handle that on a control tower situation, maybe AI or other sort of analytics tools. It obviously, is that built into your system in terms of clearly be able to manage that through a dashboard or whatever else in terms of a global supply chain?
Yeah. So we are monitoring, we are the control tower for many of our customers. But we also, as we are all for, we say sharing is caring, we share data with them as well, so they can have either their 4PL being the control tower or they run a control tower themselves. So there are different ways of setting this up. But the way we are running our own control tower is that it's automated to the highest degree. Of course, there are some humans involved as well when that is needed, but the load of alerts coming in is manageable. And it's also about, you could ask, how do you stop, or how do you refrain from getting too many alerts? So you turn it into a background noise. And that is, we learned that very early in our, let's say, control tower journey, that it's not just about sending fewer alerts, it's about sending smarter ones. And the real trick is making sure alerts are context aware and actually meaningful. So instead of pinging people for every tiny fluctuation, we build alerts around things that truly matter, meaning smarter thresholds. For example, don't trigger an alert just because something moved a little. Contextual rules like what's normal depends on the lane, the packaging type, the season, and even expected dwell times. So also noise suppression to filter out the micro movements that don't mean anything. And when you combine all those, alerts stop being background noise. They start pointing to real operational risk, the things the teams actually need to act on. So at the end of the day, alerts shouldn't create panic or distraction. They should guide action. So that's the whole point of real-time monitoring.
It's an interesting point you've raised there. Are there a number of alerts that you always should be monitoring, do you think, or is it different for every customer?
I would say, what we have learned, for example, that if you don't alert a 3PL about temperature rising from 5 degrees to 7 degrees when the range or the threshold is 2 to 8, the transportation claim is 2 to 8. They don't care about the 7 degrees. They say, it's fine. What's wrong? Why are you disturbing me? So that is something that we have gone through with our customers, is to have meaningful thresholds. So we don't become the annoying partner in this relationship where we're always hammering them with something that, what should I do?
Yeah. And what's the earliest warning sign that a shipment's about to go wrong? And then in your experience, what should they look at?
Interestingly enough, it isn't the temperature at all. What we see in the data again and again is that the first red flag shows up at like handover points or stopovers. So that's where shipments slow down, they sit too long or get stuck. And that's the moment you should start paying attention. We have tools available, like called pinpoint excursions and pinpoint bottlenecks that make this really obvious. When a shipment suddenly has extended dwell time at an airport, at a hub, or any handover facility, that's usually the earliest and most reliable predictor that a temperature excursion might happen later. Reason is pretty simple, actually. Long dwell time almost always signals an operational problem. Maybe a delay, misrouting, or handling issue. So analytical tools highlight these patterns really clearly. And by the time the shipment is sitting too long somewhere, the risk is already rising, even if the temperature is still perfectly fine. So, and then again, temperature drift is usually the result of that delay, not the cause, of course. And our pinpoint excursions show that over and over. The temperature excursions tend to happen after something operational went wrong at a specific location. So it's down to behavior, if you like.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I can see it. It's a lot of work up front with the customer to sort of put those parameters in place. But once they're in place, then they can get exactly the information they need, and you can filter out the rest. So it makes sense. If we just go around specifically around lanes and sort of smart decisions, I did see obviously that you Controlant and Smart CA, there was a partnership release there, and I know Smart CA very well. And you talked about combining real-time shipment data with simulations, which is really interesting. What was the real benefits you see to that partnership?
So yeah, by integrating real shipment data with advanced simulations, you replace assumptions with physically accurate lane-specific modeling. So as you know, the Smart CAA, this is like instead of designing for the worst case, you can finally design for the real case, reducing overpackaging, cost, and operational risk while increasing confidence in your lane and packaging strategy. And importantly, you also save significant time by eliminating the need to conduct live shipments in both winter, summer to validate performance. And with real world data feeding intelligent models, you get faster, more reliable insights without any seasonal delays. And once you're live, and if you have real-time monitoring, you get the real-time data to confirm that the choice was right, closing the loop between design, deployment, and ongoing performance. So this is a really good add-on, I would say.
Yeah. My experience of the sort of modeling area, it's incredibly accurate for things like if you want to simulate a chamber test and you can sort of simulate that pack out very accurately, it's extremely good. And if you're inside, I mean, you'll have great experience of this, but when you're inside a lorry or a reefer or a container or a warehouse, that sort of area is quite good to simulate. And as soon as you go onto the tarmac, direct sunlight, I think becomes quite challenging. And we do find a lot of customers want then to go into some live trials because the difficulty of direct sunlight is so much harder than an inside infrared situation. I don't know if you've seen the same thing. Yeah.
And I've seen like fantastic results from a chamber test. And it showed that the packaging was, could withstand this and that. But when you looked into it and we were comparing it to a specific lane that this packaging was going to be used, and it had the right thermal mass inside and everything, was right in that sense, showed that the temperature the box was going to be exposed to was completely different from the profile that had been applied in the chamber. So it didn't mean a thing in a way. The only thing you can do is to compare different packaging material to each other, giving the same profile in the chamber. I would say that's definitely a plus that you can use it for.
And I think the chambers, the climate chambers are great if you on certain lanes, as you say, if you're worried about excursions not being in direct sunlight, then they're extremely accurate at that point. I think if you, for example, if you do a chamber test and you're putting the temperature at say 35 or 40 degrees, it sounds good on paper, but that same situation on the tarmac will be 65 degrees direct sunlight temperature on your pallet.
Yeah.
So to simulate that within that model is so hard.
Yeah. And even let's say San Francisco, because we have that example. San Francisco airport, temperature nicely around 20 degrees all year round. And you think, oh, that's easy. No. Direct sunlight will increase the temperature within the ULD up to plus 70 degrees.
Yeah.
So, the air temperature is fine, but direct sunlight changes everything.
Yeah. Do you think customers are aware of this? I mean, conversations you have on a daily basis, are they getting aware of the differences here, or is it still something you're sort of educating people on?
I think, back when we started, that was not necessarily very clear. I think it's more and more that people are aware of all these variations and the risk associated. Mm-hmm. I think everybody in the supply chain have improved, and the 3PLs, they are also stepping up and informing their customers, because it would be in their custody, even if it's the ground handling agent and then the airline and ground handling agent again. I as a 3PL would be responsible for the shipment from A to B. So if I know that, this would be exposed, the goods would be exposed to plus 70 degrees, it's helpful for everybody if I inform. And I think that's what they're doing. They're helping with the risk assessment,
Yeah.
providing real world examples into the mix when decisions are made on what type of packaging is being used.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a great point. It's a good point. And I just wanted to move on to sustainability and waste because it's a hot topic the whole industry is talking about and get your views. And I know that you've been on a panel at HPCLC, and I think you were talking around sustainability and technology for logistics. In your opinion, what's the simplest first move to cut waste that you've seen in the last couple of years?
For me, I would be improved visibility. When the right people get the right information at the right time, efficiency improves immediately. So automated processes, it removes hours of manual chasing just to release a product, for example. Without timely data, teams have to quarantine shipments to be safe, of course, and that's what they should be doing. Inventory buffers grow, waste increases while people scramble to figure out what happened, when, and why. So real-time visibility breaks that cycle by reducing delays, unnecessary safety stock, and the waste that comes from not knowing what's happening.
Yeah. And and in your experience, where does cold chain waste actually come from? Is it, or where does most of the waste come from? Is it delays, packaging choices, handovers, data gaps? What's the biggest problem?
Surprisingly, at least for me at first, delays and decision bottlenecks. Most temperature excursion didn't happen because the packaging failed. They happened because operational delays weren't detected or acted on in time. So when teams don't have timely data or clear decision path, interventions come too late, turning a manageable delay into a product loss. So in other words, waste happens less from the cold chain itself and more from the time it takes to recognize and respond to issues.
Yeah. Yeah, no, agreed. I think that's been a common theme that we've heard from a lot of guests coming on. So I couldn't agree more. And when you're trying to measure the progress on sustainability with a customer or an operator, how do you do it? What are the measures that you would try and put in place to showcase progress?
So I think in order to be successful in general with sustainability, I think you need to measure using operational metrics that matter, that they care about already, that the operators care about. Not some abstract CO2 score that feels maybe disconnected from the daily work. The most effective sustainability KPIs are the ones that tie directly to performance, quality, and waste reduction. And that could be waste prevented per lane, excursions avoided, packaging reused or right-sized, interventions that directly save products, or CO2 avoided through lane or packaging optimization. These are concrete, traceable, and directly linked to actions operators influence. So sustainability becomes a natural byproduct of doing the job well, not like a separate initiative. I think that's what all of us need to do, that sustainability becomes way of working and not a separate initiative on its own that is communicated from the boardroom. And,
No, well said. Yeah, I agree. And if we just move on to looking into the future, and I know I think you've done a session on future of transportation before. What shift will most affect cold chain execution over the next 5 years? What do you think will happen in 5 years' time?
Yeah, so the next 5 years, from my point of view, will be defined by a shift from reactive monitoring to AI-driven, predictive, autonomous cold chain execution. So instead of waiting for excursions, supply chains will anticipate risk, compute the right action instantly, and intervene automatically. So the key shift ahead, as I see it, is from reactive to predictive to autonomous. AI will recommend and eventually execute interventions before a shipment is at risk. Decision speed becomes the differentiator. So the best supply chains will be the ones that can make decisions in minutes, not hours or days. And the third being standardized data sharing is becoming essential. So to fully unlock predictive and autonomous operations, the industry must break down visibility silos across pharma, airlines, forwarders, 3PLs, etc. And to summarize in short, the cold chain is becoming intelligent. Those who embrace predictive automation and the data collaboration required to support it, they will set the new global standard for reliability and resilience. That's my 2 cents on that.
No, I agree. It's a good point. I think predictive monitoring, and I agree with you. It seems the obvious step to go towards in terms of AI and being able to do that. How far away are we from that point, and what steps or what infrastructure needs to go in place for it to happen, do you think?
So I don't think we are that far away. At least some of our customers are pretty close to that, because you have to consider first we have to have clean data. We have to have good data to build on. Anything we want AI to work on needs to be the right data. So those of our customers that have started with real-time monitoring have already implemented that solution and are way ahead in their digital transformation, where they have digitized a lot of things, not just temperature monitoring, also their stability budget. All kinds of things are now digitized, available, and you have those data lakes where you can combine different data sets to get meaningful information and actionable information out of. And even then, autonomous. So you don't have to do anything because the system is set up to automatically not wake you up in the middle of the night, but to escalate and do what is needed to make sure we turn around the situation to, let's say, save a product. But also, I mean, we've seen it already with at least one of our customers where you can automate invoicing based on the location of the goods. Let's say you're already in a certain market, and that triggers a notification sent to SAP that invoices the product, and nobody has to do anything. So it goes beyond temperature and product release, although that is still the core of what we do at Controlant, is to make sure that you have data to be able to release your product safely into the markets. And we are looking into automating that process. You can already automate everything where there are no excursions. Even with excursions, you combine that with the stability data per product. So you're not just releasing a shipment, you release a product within a shipment. Like you mentioned earlier, you have a unit on a pallet. What's in the middle is okay. But imagine that you have a mix of products in a shipment. And one product is okay, even if there was kind of a severe excursion, but due to the stability of that product, you can still release that into the market. And while another product is quarantined, and you have to wait for some test results to know if it can be consumed or not.
Yeah, no, I see that. I mean, I agree. And I think that the sort of quarantine part of the industry obviously has always been really slow and cumbersome. And if you get to a point where effectively the system quarantines within a switch of a button and it released products because you had, for example, Saga Card in there that could release those cartons that were good to go. I mean, it'd be a huge step forward. But also, I mean, the predictive monitoring element of it, I presume, is going to need infrastructure in there, and it might start with a sort of active system that could do that. But it seems to be a really obvious step, and once we get there, it will be a fantastic technical step for us to take as an industry, I think. So.
And I like to believe, and I think I'm right, that companies are building the foundation for that individually, and then coming together with the right foundation, the capabilities for API connections between systems to share data, to get data foundation into a data lake where the right decisions can be made, wherever that is, if it's the 4PL, if it's the pharma company, the owner of the product, or if it's at Controlant, that doesn't really matter. The most important thing is that you provide with good data to build decisions on.
Yeah. Okay. And I know we're sort of running out of time, and so I did want to ask one more question, if that's okay. And it was really something to finish on, which, if you could change one thing about how the industry collaborates between pharma forwarders, airlines, 3PLs, and as you said, you've been at the intersection of all of them for a long time, what would it be?
So I'd standardize data sharing across all parties: pharma, forwarders, airlines, 3PLs. So right now, visibility is too fragmented to optimize globally. And without shared, consistent data, true end-to-end coordination would remain just a vision. So that would be to keep it short, standardize data sharing.
It makes sense. No, that's great. Listen, Ada, thank you so much for coming on. You've been a brilliant guest and it's a fantastic session, and I think people got a lot of value from it. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here.
Good. So you've been listening to Cold Chain Insights. My name's Thomas Hunt. Please tune in next week for our next guest, and we look forward to seeing you then.